Ask yourselves what power can do to a person. A mother, for the sake of her children, will endure suffering, hardship, and even death. It may not surprise us if we hear of her going through such tribulations, but if this same mother sees someone who has taken the life of her child, she may be capable of erasing them from the face of the earth in revenge. But what would you say if you heard that this grieving mother in her pain has killed someone in revenge? And what would your reaction be if the person she killed was her grandchildren? Athaliah, the daughter of King Ahab, committed this crime around 840 BC. Why? What happened to her? Stay tuned until the end of the video to find out. This is a story of bloodshed, war, and death, the wiping out of an entire lineage. This content may disturb some viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. The story begins with a 22-year-old youth who, following in his father's footsteps, was meant to rule over the land of Judah. But what happened to him? A year later, at the age of 23, he died. And that was the end of his reign. Done. Over. Finished. Or is it? I wish I could say the story ends here, but it's just the beginning. This young man's name is Ahaziah. Many teenagers these days, when they turn 21, look forward to getting their ID and drinking or sneaking into private parties. But this young man had bigger responsibilities. His father, the ruler of Judah, had died. After his father's death, he was made king. But he wasn't just a king. At the time, the northern kingdom of Israel and Aram, modern-day Syria, were engaged in a border conflict. The king of Israel was named Joram. This 22-year-old king of Judah was expected to support his king Joram in the war. Why? Because Joram, the one who ruled the northern Israel, was his uncle. Ahaziah, the young king of Judah, felt it was his duty to assist his uncle in the war. They went together to fight Hazael, the king of Aram, in Ramoth-Gilead. Here's the interesting part. Even today, Israel and Syria are still at odds over this border town. Despite their best efforts to win during the battle, King Joram was wounded, so he retreated to the northern Israelite city of Jezreel to recover. Ahaziah, wanting to care for his uncle, went with him. But something shocking was about to happen. While King Joram was in Jezreel, nursing his wounds, Jehu, the commander of the Israel's army, left the battlefield and came to the city. He assassinated King Joram. I know you're probably asking a lot of questions now. Why? How? What? Okay, let's rewind a bit. Jehu, the commander of the Israel army, was a famous military leader who was loyal to the Israel army and the king. Through the prophet Elisha's intervention, Jehu had been secretly anointed as the next king of Israel. This happened when Jehu was still on the battlefield, watching over the Israeli army, as the chief leader since the king was wounded and left for Jezreel. When Jehu learned that he had been chosen, he immediately set out back to his country, to the city of Jezreel. Upon arriving, he found Joram was still recovering from his wounds, and without hesitation, he killed him. But Jehu didn't stop there. He also killed Ahaziah, the young newly crowned king of Judea, who had been tending to his uncle. Why would Jehu kill Ahaziah, the king of Judah, when Jehu was only supposed to be king of Israel? And why were both Joram and Ahaziah killed? The answer lies with the dead child's mother. No, don't jump to conclusions. His mother, Queen Athaliah, didn't order anyone to kill him. She wasn't that cruel. However, she did murder her own grandchildren. Yes, you heard that right. She wiped out an entire generation. Why would she do that? In her desperation, Athaliah wanted to wipe out any heirs to the throne to secure her own power. Again, to understand this, we need to go further back. The 23-year-old child was struck by an arrow while fleeing from his uncle's army commander was the grandson of King Ahab. Many of you might ask, who is he? King Ahab was the king of Israel, but you are probably more familiar with his wife, who is more famous than him. When I mention her name, you will immediately say, oh, it's her. The grandmother of the dead child is Jezebel. You may have heard the expression, the spirit of Jezebel. This woman was the daughter of the king of Phoenicia. The king of Israel, Ahab, married her because northern Israel was in a border conflict with Syria at the time. And Phoenicia, which is modern-day Lebanon, was a powerful nation in the region with strong naval and trading activities. Thus, Ahab married the daughter of the Phoenician king to establish familial ties, so it was a political marriage. However, this marriage brought with it a significant problem. The Israelites worshipped one God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, known as Yahweh, the one and only creator and ruler of heaven and earth. Meanwhile, the Phoenicians worshipped two gods. The first was Asherah, the goddess of fertility and the sea, and the second was Baal, also a fertility god. Not only did these two religions differ in their gods, but their worship practices were also quite different. The Israelites offered sheep as sacrifices to their god for thanksgiving and seeking forgiveness. On the other hand, the Phoenicians sacrificed animals, but not just animals sometimes. They even sacrificed their own children. So, this daughter of the Phoenician king, Jezebel, brought with her disturbing religious practices and idol worship into the house of Israel. And Ahab was the type of man we would call a simp in today's terms. He did whatever his wife told him to do. On the other hand, Jezebel was not a simple woman. In a short period, she killed the prophets of Yahweh, built a temple for Baal, and led the people of Israel away from worshiping Yahweh. She even made her children offer sacrifices in Baal worship. As a result, God became angry, saying, and I quote, "For they have forsaken me, and made this a place of foreign gods. They have burned incense in it to gods that neither they, nor their ancestors, nor the kings of Judah ever knew. And they have filled this place with the blood of the innocent. They have built the high places of Baal to burn their children in the fire as offerings to Baal, something I did not command or mention, nor did it enter my mind." Jeremiah chapter 19 verse 4. Even after repeatedly doing this, and despite God sending many prophets to warn them and ask them to repent, they mocked the prophets, tortured them, and killed them. Finally, Yahweh passed judgment on Ahab and Jezebel, and he said, "Dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Dogs will eat those belonging to Ahab, who die in the city, and the birds will feed on those who die in the country." 1 Kings chapter 21 verse 23. This prophecy foreshadows the grim and violent fate that would befall the descendants of Jezebel and Ahab as a consequence of their actions. It was the fulfillment of God's judgment. After Ahab's death, although his son Joram ascended the throne, the prophet Elisha was sent to anoint a new king, Jehu, to overthrow the corrupt dynasty. This prophecy foreshadows the grim and violent fate that would befall the descendants of Jezebel and Ahab as a consequence of their actions. Aside from Joram, Ahab and Jezebel had a daughter named Athaliah, who was married off to the southern king of Judah in a bid for another political unity. Athaliah gave birth to Ahaziah, who became king at the age of 22, only to die tragically young. As queen mother, Athaliah clung to the worship of Baal and Asherah, just as her infamous mother Jezebel had. Despite her Hebrew name, which ironically means Yahweh is exalted, Athaliah was anything but righteous. Her life was marked by bloodshed. She witnessed the deaths of her father, King Ahab, and her husband, then her brother King Joram, and 70 more stepbrothers she had, by the order of the high priest, and eventually her son. But the sad thing was, her lust for power and anger drove her in a shocking bid to secure the throne for herself. She ordered the execution of her nephews and eliminated anyone who could threaten her reign, even going so far as to kill her grandsons. Well, except for one, Joash. Unbeknownst to her, her stepdaughter Jehosheba had secretly hidden this child away, sparing his life. Meanwhile, Jezebel, Ahab's notorious wife, was still alive. When Jehu, the newly anointed king, marched to confront her, she brazenly adorned herself with makeup and sat defiantly in the palace window, waiting to face her son's murderer, and maybe ask him to marry her and be a queen again. I don't know why she was doing what she was doing. As Jehu approached, she greeted him with false cordiality, but Jehu wasted no time. He ordered her servants to throw her down from the window, and they obeyed. Jezebel fell to her death, her body trampled by horses. So this man went to the palace, ate food, and made himself at home. Later, he remembered he had left a dead body by the doors and ordered her burial as befits a queen. And I quote, he said, "Take care of that cursed woman, and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." 2 Kings chapter 9 verse 34. However, when they went to bury her, they found only her skull, feet, and hands, fulfilling the prophecy that dogs would devour her flesh. Her daughter Athaliah met a similar fate. Despite her ruthless purges, she remained unaware that her stepdaughter Jehosheba had saved Joash, her nephew. When the priests discovered Joash's identity, they crowned him king in secret. When Athaliah heard of this, she tore her garments and screamed, "Treason!" But her cries went unheeded. The priests dragged her out of the city and executed her, marking the end of her bloody reign. Her grandchild she had sought to kill, Joash, ascended the throne, becoming the only surviving heir to the throne, saved by the courageous actions of his aunt. The end. Subscribe, like, and share.